Greetings, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar under our yearly campaign, Accelerate the Possible with Panduit Solutions through the next chapter in digital transformation. Today, Mohamed Abdel Rahman, Senior Technical Consultant at Trident, will tackle how to accelerate the possible with Panduit's innovative fiber connectivity solutions. I'm Vanessa Azzi, Marketing Executive at Trident, and I will be moderating the session today. The webinar will be starting shortly. You don't have to worry about your microphones or your webcams. Those are disabled for you. We will make sure all your questions will be answered at the end of the session, but please do get those entered in the Q&A section located at the bottom of your screen in the control panel, as some questions may get lost in the chat. Now, without further delay, I'll leave the stage to Mohamed.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa, for your introduction. Hello and welcome everyone to our today new webinar. As mentioned by Vanessa, today we will be focused on how to maximize your network performance using Panduit innovative fiber connectivity solutions. So let me share, this is the today agenda. During today's presentations, we will cover the following topics. First, very briefly, we will discuss why now it is a time for future-proof your network or your fiber infrastructure. Then we'll start with Panduit innovative and some innovative and patent from Panduit, especially in fiber optic cabling system, which can support any network of any shape and size. We will talk about Panduit MPO connectors and these innovations and patent from Panduit. Also, the signature core cabling system, which is sometimes it's called OM4 Plus or OM5 Plus. We will discuss this briefly. Also, the deploying of fiber optic cabling inside the data center using the pre-terminated solutions, tested, configured. It is very important to have a quick and plug and play deployment for your network. So if you have any time issue or for installations, you have multiple of perfect infrastructure solutions we can be offered, especially for the pre-terminated solutions. Also, Panduit AOC active optical cables assembles. We can be offered multiple choice to meet your need. If you need to have faster speed and processing, also low power consumptions. We discussed in our previous webinar DAC cables, and today we are going to talk about active optical cables, which is pre-terminated coupled with the transceivers from both sides. Finally, the Panduit Optic Cam, innovative Optic Cam termination tools and the advanced to use when you are using optical or Optic Cam termination. So let's start with first topic. For this introduction, so today data is drives us. As you can see here, what happened in an internet minute in 2021 after COVID-19 versus 2019 before COVID-19. 60 seconds in internet in 2021 consists of communications by you have share, post, and you can see here for YouTube you have around 500 hours of content can be upload in 60 seconds only in 2021. Also Instagram or messages, it is around 70 or 70 million message via WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, as well as you can see here for the online shopping, increasing of online shopping, it's around 1.6 million US dollar spent online in 60 seconds. You can be compared the numbers between 2021 and 2019. We can see the progress of many companies between the 2 years, and also some companies and other didn't even exist in 2019, like TikTok. It appeared here in 2021. It's not appeared and not exist in 2019. Today you have a new way for communications, business. You have business using the Microsoft Teams, Zooms, Google Zoom. So you have now some new consumer habits. You have increased online shopping and deliverable. So you have now its challenges to have facing when you are going to deploy a new data center. So this is a summary for the challenges that you are facing when you are talking about the data center and data center deploying. So you can be start one of the biggest challenges when you are talking about the challenge for any data center, the increasing of the traffic, inside the data center, which require fiber optic link bandwidths to have capacity, to have to keep expanding over the time. Also, we will discuss today the data center traffic no longer coming from outside to inside the data center. Most of the traffic in data center now based on east to west, it's called from server to server. So you have application to application traffic increased. So you are requiring for higher data rate, higher throughput, low latency when you talk about the data center. So today, the introductions for new data rate is accelerating. As you can see, we talked before about 10 gig, so you have 25 gig or 40 gig, 100 gig. Now we are talking about 800 gig using the multimode cabling. So the introductions for the new data rate is accelerating. The bandwidth requirement or demand is growing every day. So you need to upgrade your network in the future. So you need to consider that not only the speed is growing, the time or the speed for the introduce of new data rate is also expanding. So you have big challenges for the future proofing. You need to future proofing. Future proofing, it means that you need to make sure that the installed infrastructure today will be work for tomorrow with the increasing and high demand for the bandwidth. Another challenges for data center or data center professional, you need to expect to do all of this by reducing the capital expenses and operating costs. So it is also one of the challenges with the increasing of data rate or bandwidth required. So you can see now you have how to support the increasing or the requirement and demand for the bandwidth need without rip and replace your network every few years. So this is the big challenge, that you need to support your data center bandwidth needs without rip and replace or upgrading your infrastructure every few years. So you need to invest in a solutions that can enable you have a flexibility. You have a cost-efficient upgrading when you are going to upgrade, for example, from 10 gig to 40 gig or 100 gig, as we will discuss in the upcoming slide. Also, you need to invest for the flexible solutions. You can be upgrading easily without adding any extra cost. So it's a very important thing when you are going to discuss an infrastructure design. You need to discuss it is as a top-down approach. Top-down approach, it's very important. You need to understand first the application required. The application will be running for the infrastructure using the fiber. You don't need only to focusing on today data rate or today bandwidth required. You need to understand the applications that will be running today and in the future. You need to understand, especially for the fiber, are you going to have a serial transmission or you are going to parallel transmission using SR4 for the multimode? You need to understand you are going using the serial duplex using PiDi from Cisco or from other vendors. So it's very important the applications that will be used in the future. So you have many trends when you are talking about the infrastructure using the fiber cable. The first trend that you need to discuss choose between 3 tiers, traditional data center architectures, or you are going to design using the 2-tier or spine leaf. The 3 tiers data center, it is generally recommended for data center in the past. So today, most of the data, as we said, it is coming from east to west or from server to server. So it is very important to consider another approach or another trend when you are talking about the design. This is, as you can see here, this is the logical diagram for the 3 tiers. architectures. The three-tier architectures, as I think most of you understand, the three tiers starting from the access layer, aggregation layer, and the core switches layer. But today, around, as I said, the majority of the traffic is around 76% of the traffic is moved from server to another server, from application to another application. Sometimes it's called east-to-west traffic. So the traffic, when you are go through the three tiers, it will have suffer from high latency due to the many hop when server need to send to another server. So you will be suffer from high latency due to the many hop will be happen. These architectures not used nowadays inside the data center. It is mainly used for enterprise solutions. So now, as I said, the spine leaf architecture, or sometimes it's called fat tree. The fat tree architecture is consists of only two switching layers. The first switching layer, as you can see, the logical diagram here consists of two tiers, starting from the access layer, or it's called leaf architectures or leaf switch. Leaf switch is very similar to the traditional access switch, but you have increasing capability for the bandwidth or for data rate required today. You can be connecting to the server using 10 gig or 25 gig, which is introduced nowadays, 25 using the duplex or serial transmission. Then you are to connect to the spine switch. The spine switch, it's like a core switch, very high throughput or low latency switches. You have a direct connection from each leaf to all spine. Each leaf, as you can see here in the architectures, you have each leaf or each switch will be connected to all spine. However, no connections between leaves or no connections between the spine. So now you have low latency. Each leaf have only one hop to communicate with another leaf switch. This architecture is giving you the latency, giving you another advantage. It's called scalability. Scalability, it means that you can be increasing another leaf, you can be increase the leaf switch quantity of the design port, and only you need to connect it to the different spines here. So this is very important when you are going to talk about the east-west traffic or the traffic that will be happening nowadays. Now, excluding the hyperscale data center, when you are talking about the data center, the multimode optical fiber is still currently the most common media of a choice for the data center. However, compared to the single mode, I think most of you know that the multi-mode have a shorter distance limitations, and also we will discuss the limitations for the multi-mode and the distance for each applications when you are talking about the applications using the multi-mode. Okay, you can see here, this is the 40, 100, 400 gig market evaluations and the port evaluations. You can see 100 gig started to launch it and exceed the 40 gig in 2017. The port 40 gig sold worldwide. Also the 400 gig is introduced last year, and also to have many transceiver choice using the single mode, most of them single mode, but you have now introduced for the multi-mode using the 40 gig with limitations for the bandwidth, for the length, as I said. So it is very important to specify which application you are going to be run based on your limitations. And also I will be discuss with you our calculator to can save your time when you are going to design for a new application. So this is the first polling question. The first one, another trend, it's called breakout architecture. So are you using breakout architectures in your network topology? Okay, around 50% is talking about, I don't know what breakout architecture. So let's discuss about the breakout architectures. This is another trend for the market. Nowadays, you need to have a breakout cable, or sometimes it's called harness cable. It's called 4-to-1 convergence harness. You can see here, you have only one port in the switch. This one port is broken down into multiple low speed ports. So you have here high data speed or high data rate port in the switch, and you need to connect it to multiple low-speed ports. For example, you have here the switch. This is the aggregation switch, or this is the access switch, and you need to connect to the 4 different servers using SFP+. So the active switch are using only one module for QSFP. This is the form factor for 40 gig. And you are connected it to a 4 different server, for example, using the SFP plus 10 gig, instead of having 4 different buses from the server to the port. So you have saving your cost, saving your power consumptions. We will discuss the meaning of power consumption saving in the next slide. Also, you can be break out for 100 gig. It's available now to have a 100 gig to be split over 4 25 gigabit channels. So it will give you some more efficiency, some greater port density, especially for the switches, for the network cabinet or network architectures. So as I mentioned in last slides, the breakout application help you to have a more efficiency, more greater port density in the network design. This is the traditional topology. You are needing to connect 4 SFP plus from active device to another device. So you need to have 4 passes for the 10 gig. On the right example, this is a breakout topology. This concept can be applied for now for 100 gig for 25 gig. Also, it can be split 200 gig. It's available nowadays to split it to 450 gig. Also, you can be split 400 gig to 100 gig bit per second. So it means that, for example, if you have a 32 port switch, each port with 40 gig port using multi-mode, you can be extend it up to multiply 32 by 8. So you have a 256 ports from the 50 gig. You can be connected to the switch of 32 ports. So you have now saving your space, you are saving your capital expenses, you are saving your power consumptions. As you can see here, one port from QSFP, it have around 1.5 watt power consumptions. But if you are going to have a 4 SFP, each SFP will have a 1 watt for the power consumption. So instead of 4 watt for every port, you have now 1.5 watt power consumptions for this port. So you have around 62% less in power required for the switch. Next, let's discuss now about the first innovations from the Panduit, which is called Panduit MPO connectors. This is the Pan MPO connector. So let me jump to the next slide. I think all of you are aware of the available connectors, which is available now in the market, LC or SC, duplex LC connectors for the single mode, for the multi-mode LC duplex, or even LC ABC angle connector, and so on, which is used for the serial transmissions for the data. But let's today focus on the array connector. This is the array connector. It's called MPO, which is one of the famous fiber connectors nowadays. It's called MPO, multi-fiber push-on. It is industry standard for the high density fiber deployment, especially for the pre-terminated solutions. Only one cable with MPO, it is around 3 millimeter diameters, and one connectors from MPO, you can have a 6 duplex, for a minimum 6 duplex LC port per one connector. So you can be using for the 10 gig. So MPO, it is an array connector. It is not only 2 fiber connector like traditional connector, and also it is available in 8 and 12. Also, it's available in 24 cores per connector with the same form factors for the MPO. It's available now 8, 12, and 24. And also it is approved nowadays by TIA for 12 and 24. It is not approved till now. So let's talk more about the MPO, the main features for the MPO. How can I use the MPO for the migrations from 10 to 40 or 100 gig, and the advantage for it? First, have a look at the MPO. This is the MPO connectors. The MPO connector, it's called, as I said, multi-fiber push-on. This connector is multi-fiber connector. It contains, as you can see, this is the housing or the outer housing. You can be push connector inside the adapter, or you can be disengage the connector directly. You have the body of the connectors for the MPO. You have the fiber for rule. It's contained around, as I said, you have a 12 fiber. You can get it 8 fiber or 24 fiber base. So you have 3 different types. The array fiber for the MB08 interface, it is not strictly standard recognized for the infrastructure interface. So we are focusing on 12 fiber and 24 fiber. The MBO 12 fiber is globally recognized standard interface for the multi-mode or single mode, and it is available for a decade, for several decades, widely used nowadays for the trunk cable, for the interconnect cable, for the patch cord. So each connector, you can see here, you have alignment pins. These pins, it is for the male connector or female. So let's start for the MBO. You can see here the key for the connectors, the polarization key, and also you have the gender for the key. The MPO connection, it is just like alignment adapter. So if you have alignment adapter, you have alignment pins, you have a gender, it can be male or female, but note that you are needing to connect the female to the male. As you can see here, this is the adapter. If you have a connectors and you need to add, for example, a patch cord, you need to have a connections using male to female. If you are connecting 2 pins directly, it will be damage your pins. If you are connecting pins, it don't have a poor alignment or misalignment between the 2 connectivity. So the alignment for the MPO, it is using the adapter, MPO adapter, and you need to have male and female connections. Also the polarizations, you need to check the polarizations. Is this key up? As you can see here in this picture, it's called key up polarizations. The polarization is very important to ensure that the transmission of the data and you have a communications between the transmitter and the receiver. So the connections between them, it is very important to adjust the polarities to have a transmissions between the transmitter and the receiver. So you have a different configurations. It can be key up or key down. You can see here 2 examples from the cable. You have method B or method A. Method B, it's called the key up to key up. Method B A, it's called key up to key down, which is used for the 10 gig transmissions. This one, it's key up to key up or method B, which is recommendations from the TIA to using method B when you are connecting using the 40 gig applications. So now, what is PAN MPO or Panduit PAN MPO connector? PAN MPO connectors or connectors from the Panduit, it is the only connector in the market nowadays. Sorry. Okay. So the PAN MPO connector, it is the only connector on the market that can be changed both the polarity and the gender. As I told you, you need to choose the gender, it is male or female based on it is trunk or patch cord. Are you going to connect the MPO to the active switch? The active, for example, the active equipment, it have a male interface, so you need to have a female interface. So the gender is very important. The polarity also, it very important to ensure that the transmission between the transmitter and the receiver. So we have one connector does it all. Does it all? It means that our connector can be configured as on-site field configurations as a male or female. The polarity, method A or method B, key up or key down, can be adjusted in the field. So you have ability to migrate from 10 gig to 40 gig inside the field. This is very important for the MPO. You don't have to concern about the design, which cables or which cable to need to be stocked. So you have one cable can do everything. You can be choose the male or female, the polarity for the connector in the field. Another very important feature that when you are going to cleaning the MPO, if you have, for example, male MPO, and you are going to have a cleaning for the connector, the area around the base of the male pins, very difficult to clean. But using our PAN MPO, you can convert the male to female and having the cleaning for the MPO, then you are converted it to male. So you can see here, this is the bandwidth innovative bandwidth MPO, which solves the issue for the polarity, for the gender. You can be changing it on the field. So the polarity can be changed, as you can see here in the top. The polarity can be changed. It's very simple. You are going to remove the housing. Then you are installing it from upside to downside. So you can be converted it to from the key up to key down. Also the gender. The gender you can be removing after removing the housing and using our pin tools. You can be changing it from female to male. So you don't have, never have a wrong cord in the field. One cable can take place 6 different configurations. You can see here, only one cable can have 6 different configurations from the polarity you have is key up or key down, also the gender, female or male. So you have now 6 configurations for only one cable. So now you have eliminations, I guess, for the polarity and gender when you are going to ordering the MPO cable. Also, another advantage for the band MPO coming in this example, as we will discuss in the upcoming slide for the meaning of PiDi or meaning of 40 gig using the SR4 or SR10 or the different scenarios. You can see here, this is the advantage for the band MPO. Imagine you have a network, as we call the MPO. It is very important for the high density applications. Only one cable. You can using one cable from the MPO with 12 connectors, and you have cassette from both sides. So you have now 6 connections from LC duplex in your side. And you are using 10 gig or 25 gig using the duplex, or you are going to using the PiDi. PiDi, it means that you need only 2 cores. If you are need to change to the 40 or 100 gig, as per the approval or compliant with IEEE to having the 40 gig or 100 gig by IEEE, you need to using MPO interface to having 4 pairs for transmitted, 4 cores for the transmission and 4 cores for the receiving. So you need to have MPO interface. So based in TIA 568, it is recommended that we'll be going to change the cassette. This is to the band MPO or band or MPO adapter. This cable, based on the standard, as I said, you need to convert it from the female to male. So you need, if you are going to using the 40 gig, for example, or 100 gig, you need to change the female to the male, because the batch cord here that will be connected to the equipment, the batch cord, it needs to have a female, then you have a female to female batch cord be connected to the equipment. So the trunk cable or backbone cable, the recommendations from the standard to convert it to the male. So you need to have to changing this cable. Also, you need to have a method B to connections between this cable. So the only available in the market, you need to change the cable. But using our cables from bandwidth band MPO, you can be changing the gender from the female to male. Also, you can be changing from method A to method B for the polarity to make sure that the data will be transmitted from the transmitter to the receiver. So this is one of the advantages for the MPO, our band MPO, when you are going to have a migrations to higher data speed. You don't need to changing or rip and replace your equipment or infrastructures. So now I'm going to talk to another features or another innovative and patent from Panduit, which is called Panduit signature score. So this is the second polling question. Have you heard before about Panduit signature score fiber optic cabling? It's also sometimes called OM4 plus or OM5 plus. Okay, I think something 36% here have information about signature score. So let's start with the meaning of our signature score. Okay, this is the milestone for the multimode fiber. As I told you that for excluding the hyperscale data center, still we are going to using the multimode due to the cost reductions for the infrastructure. So this is the milestones for the multimode fiber transmission. Panduit in 2011 launched a new cable that is minimizing some sort of cold dispersion, which is enabling to have a longest reach for the cable. It's called Signatures Core cable. And also Cisco in 2013 is launched Cisco PiDi Cisco for the 40 gig, and now it's launched for the 100 gig, the dual transceiver, to having a duplex fiber or 2 cores only to transmit 40 gig or 100 gig. And the recommendations from the Cisco to extend your channel reach to using our signatures core or cable, or called sometimes it's called OM4 plus. I will discuss with you in the upcoming slides the main features or main advantage for the signatures core, what signatures core do to extend your channel reach. Also, the multimode fiber standard TIA developed OM5. It's called in the first beginning wideband multimode fiber. Then in 2016, ISO, it's approved for the cable. It's called OM5 by ISO. As you can see here, Panduit, the first effectively addressed the challenge of minimizing the chromatic dispersion. The chromatic dispersion, it is the main disadvantage for the multimode fiber. The dispersion, it is have limitations, your distance for the multimode fiber, and Panduit, it's a leading for these evaluations, discovering the meaning of the some sort is called dispersion or chromatic dispersion, which is limitations for the distance for the 40 gig or 100 gig, for example. So now, let me give you some brief or some basic information, the meaning of dispersions, what dispersion will do, and the impact for the dispersion for the network performance. If you are considering that you have a stream of ones of 0 need to be transmitted from one side to another side, as you can see here, you can be identified which is 1 and which is 0. This is at the transmitter side. But when this stream or ones on 0 has been transmitted or propagate through the fiber, the dispersions means that the pulses will be prodding, will be have a spreading the pulses. It means that the dispersion, the main impact for the dispersion, that you cannot identify as a receiver which is 1 and which is 0. To have now intersymbol interference between the pulses, it's very dangerous for the fiber, for the multimode fiber. So you have a limitations, you cannot sending multiple bits. So you have a limitations for the data rate and limitations for the distance. For the high data rate, you will have a drop for the frames. You need to retransmit it again. It will have latency, so it will be effect for your performance. The dispersion have 2 types of dispersions available for the multimode. The first one, it's called modal dispersion, and it's solved by using laser optimized in OM3 and OM4. But the chromatic dispersion, which is very important, let me give you the meaning of chromatic dispersion and the main basic information for the chromatic and what Panduit do in our OM4 or OM5. Very important to consider that this is the laser. For the multimode, you are not using the laser diode. You are using VCSEL laser. VCSEL laser, it is an inexpensive laser. It's called vertical cavity surface emitting laser. This laser not have only one wavelength or when only one color will be transmitted. It is not ideal. It will have multiple of wavelengths. So for 850 nanometer, which is used in multimode application, it will be generated by VCSELs. You have multiple of wavelengths. When this wavelength is transmitted, so you have this pulse, it will be transmitted using multiple wavelengths. The different color or wavelengths have a different passes on the fiber of the multimode fiber on the another side. So you will have a dispersions will be happen. Dispersion will be happen due to the different passes for each color. It means that you have spreading for the pulse. This is the main dangerous, main disadvantage for the multimode fiber. It's called chromatic dispersion. And Panduit solves this issue using signatures core fiber. As you can see here, these animations, you can see when you are transmitting the laser inside our cable or our signatures core cable, the wavelengths will be traveled down the fiber, and the signatures core will be designed to keep individual wavelengths to be lined up. Lined up, it means that it will be arrived on the same times. So the pulses, it will not be affected or will be spreading on the fiber. So this is the chromatic dispersion and what bandwidth have do using the signature core. So you have now extend the length using the signature core. I will show you the table for the different applications. The main advantage when you are going to using the signature core, it can be give you another solutions instead of using single mode. If you have a higher distance, so you can be using our signature core from OM4 or OM5 signature core. We have a complete pre-terminated solutions. It is only used in the data center, so it is a pre-terminated signature core solutions, can be used for data center. So we have a complete solution starting from the cable, from the cassettes, from the cables, from the cassette, from the patch cord, end-to-end solutions using the signature core. So now this is the third polling questions. This is from your opinion, OM5 will give you longer transmission distance than OM4 when you are making the design for infrastructure for using the multimode. Or you have a longer distance using the OM5 instead of using OM4? I think we have here 53% saying no. This is the correct answer, that actually for the current or future multimode IEEE applications, I'm saying that what is approved in IEEE applications, including 40 gig, or when you are going to have a 100 gig transmissions, or even 400 gig, which is available now, you don't have any advantage to using OM5 instead of OM4. If the data center is non-IEEE compliant, you are using 100 gig using sorry, SWDM. So OM5, it will give you greater distance. But using the IEEE applications, I will show you the table for the approved applications from IEEE. You don't have any advantage to using OM5 instead of OM4. So let me give you some brief about OM5. OM5 solutions, it is called wideband multimode fiber. It is a laser optimized multimode solutions. It is designed to have a 4 different wavelengths made over single core. So you have a wavelengths starting from 850 up to 95.3 nanometer can be transmitted using a single core. So SWDM application, it is not exclusive also for OM5. Another advantage, you can be using this application to transmit different wavelengths on OM3 or OM5 or OM4, but with limited distance. OM5, it will give you greater distance when you are using the application which is called SWDM. If you are having application for SWDM using the transceivers, OM5, it will be giving you greater distance. But it is not approved, as I said, SWDM technology, it's not approved by IEEE. It is MSA, it's called multi-source agreement between the different vendor to using transceiver agreement to have a transceiver which is standard for different vendors. Also, when you are going to have a migration to 40 gig or 100 gig, you have a solution, it's called PiDi, it's from starting by Cisco. Cisco PiDi can be using bidirectional. You have only 2 core. First core, you are be transmitting and receiving using 850 for transmission and 900 nanometer for the receiving. So you have around 40 gig or 100 gig even using the different modulations or modifications like band 4. You can be band 4, you can have a 100 gig or 40 gig using your infrastructure or your duplex infrastructure. But SR4, it is approved by IEEE. SR4, it means that you have a 4 pairs. 4 pairs, it means you have 4 for transmission and 4 for the receiving for the fiber. So minimum you need to have 8 fibers. So you need to have MPO fiber, as we said, starting from 8 fiber or 12 fiber can be used for SR4 to transmit and receive starting from 40 gig base SR4. So PiDi technology is introduced, as I said, by Cisco. It is a QSFP transceivers to transmit and receiving using the duplex pipe. You can see here, this is SR4 10 gig, or if you have a 25 gig using the duplex. If you need to have a migration to 40 or 100 gig, you have two choices. You need to change your infrastructure to pan MPO, or you can be using the same infrastructure using the different or the PiDi application, QSFP PiDi. But the recommendations from Cisco, these are recommendations from Cisco when you are going to have a PiDi applications to going with signature score from Panduit. And if you are going to the white paper from Cisco for the applications or for introducing for the PiDi application, you will be find the part number or the product from Panduit, and this is the recommendations from Cisco. You can see here, this is the applications, the different applications available using the multi-mode applications. One thing I need to introduce to you or to specify here, that when you are using OM4 or OM5, this is the conclusions from this table. You can see here, when you are going to have only wavelengths for the application will be transmitted over the core fiber, you don't have any advantage when you are using OM4 or OM5. You have the same reach distance for the OM5 and OM4. It is the same up to 32 if you have a fiber channel. The only difference between OM4 or OM5, when you have a dual or 4 wavelengths will be transmitted over the core. So this is the main advantage for the OM5. Also for the signature score, starting from PiDi, you are using here your infrastructure, your duplex infrastructure. Signature score from Panduit can reach up to 200 meters instead of 135 meters for OM4 or 150 meters from OM5. So the signature score OM4, it will be optimum solutions when you are going to have even single wavelengths or dual wavelengths. You have here around 12% greater than OM4 using the signature score and the solving for the chromatic dispersions happened in the multi-mode. You have around 20% over outperforms greater than using OM4, and even OM5 you have a greater distance using the signature score from Panduit. But the only applications when you are going to have SWDM, as I told you, you are transmitting here 4 wavelengths per core. So you have a 2 duplex or 2 cores only to transmit 40 or 100 gig. You will be see here the OM5, it will be good choice instead of using OM4 or even signature score from Panduit. Also, Panduit in 2017, we introduced a new fiber. It's called Signature Score OM5. Signature Score OM5, it outperforms the standard from OM5 fiber. For any SWDM applications, you will have a greater distance using the Signature Score OM5 applications for the multi. Let me jump to another. You can see here, this is the also the OM5. OM5, it have a greater distance, as I said, instead of OM4 or when you are using OM5. This is also very important link or interactive tools from Panduit. It's called Link Close Design Calculator. It's very helpful for you when you are going to have a design for the multi-mode applications. You need to meet your requirements, not above or not below. You can, using these tools, you can get the maximum reach applications. When you are making your design, you can choosing your infrastructure, the cassettes, when you are using OM4 or you are using OM4 signature score or OM5, and it will give you the different applications can be used and the maximum reach for the application based on 1.5 giga or 1.5 dB losses for the total end-to-end. Okay, we have now 5 minutes. Quickly, I will give you some brief for the Panduit solutions, for the pre-terminated solutions, what we can be offer using Panduit solutions. We have a pre-terminated solutions. As I said, the pre-terminated solution assembly, we have a good tools, online tools. It's called CBQ. You can be using it to configure the cable. You can be choosing the cable that you are required. You can be choosing the cassette, the end 1 and the end 2. You can be configured band MPO or MPO, normal MPO, but in Panduit, we have the same pricing when you are using band MPO or normal MPO. So I encourage you to use the band MPO cable. Also, for the cable, you can be choosing trunk cable or interconnect cable. In Panduit, we recommend to using interconnect cable up to 30 meter. Greater than 30 meter, the recommendation for the backbone cables or for the connections to the entrance room or for connections from HDA to main distribution area, the recommendation to going with trunk cable. It gives you greater mechanical protections instead of interconnect. It coming also with a pulling eyes to have a pulling for the cable with a greater mechanical protections. Also, you can be choosing from the which cable you are using. After using our tool, you can be choosing OM4 plus signature score, or which cable. For the cable also, we have different scenarios for the losses. We have the standard loss, optimized loss, and we have the ultra low loss for the cable you can be choosing. After choosing your cable, you can be choosing for the fiber enclosures. We have 3 different scenarios when you are going to the enclosures. We have the HDFlex, which is recommended for the data center for the high density port. And also we have the QuickNet solution, which is like a panel. It is not enclosures. It can be accept copper and fiber on the same module. As you can see here, this is the copper and the fiber on the same panel. And also we have a product line, it's called Optical. It is a traditional and it is mainly using for the enterprise solutions. For the HDFlex, we have HDFlex. It is very important, especially for data center. As I said, we have a high density. You have a small footprint for the data center, especially when you are designed for the co-location data center. You need to have a high density applications. Can be configured up to 144 fibers based on 1 rack unit. 1 rack unit can be installed 144 cores. Also for 4 rack unit, you can have like 576 cores can be installed inside the HDFlex. Also, it have an integral, as you can see here. This is the integral front cable management. You don't have any tool, just you can be drop the cassette inside the HDFlex and you can be installed your cable. It's very important. Also, you have a different configurations when you are going to have a HDFlex. You have the drawer. Each rack unit, as I said, it have a 3 drawer, 3 per rack unit, and you can be configured it to have. You can be configured with different cassette. Can be configured 6 port for the cassette. You can be configured it as 12 port cassette, and even you can be configured it as a 4 port cassette per rack unit. So you have a flexibility when you are talk about the installations for the cassette inside the patch panel or the enclosures. Also, we have a full range from the cassette splicing, or even you are using band MPO or MPO interface. We can have adapters, MPO fiber adapter panel, which have a unique features. Also here, when you are to route a band MPO cable, when you are installed inside the adapters or band MPO adapters. Panduit also introduced a new patch cord it's called Uniboot duplex fiber patch cord. It is innovative also from Panduit. It have a innovative for the pull puts. You can be pulling it. You have a slimmer connectors here for the LC connector. You can be easy access, especially for the high density applications. You don't have any effort or effortless when you are changing the polarity from B to AA for the patch cord. It's very easy, and also it is compatible with the new transceivers from Cisco for the 25 gig using the serial duplex or serial transmission. This patch cord also can be pushed down inside the patch panel. You can push it or pull inside the patch cord directly without any clips for the patch cord. Okay, okay, we have 7 minutes now. Okay, very quickly, we are talking now about the Panduit active optical cables. We have another polling questions here. Have you heard before about bandwidth active optical cable, or even in general, did you ever used before active optical cable? Okay, for the AOC, let's talk about the AOC or active optical cable. It's like DAC cables we discussed in last webinar. We talked about the DAC cables, direct attached cable from the copper. It is the same for AOC, active optical cable. It is a cable used to connect, for example, switch to another switch for the top of the rack, or even from the switch to another switch or switch to servers. AOC is always active cable, not like direct attached cable. That cables we talked about it before have a passive cable for up to 5 meters or 7 meters. This cable can be have a longer distance. It can be up to 30 meters to have a top of the rack or end of the rack connections. This cable comes along with the transceiver from both sides. This is the difference, that you have the cable and the transceiver from the both sides. You have a lower cost. Lower cost is coming from when you are manufacturing these pixels or this transceiver, you have, you know, the distance for it. You don't using the worst case, for example, you are manufacturing the pixel to support up to 300 meters. No, you are manufacturing the pixel or the laser die to support maximum 30 meters or the cable length that you are going to use. So you have a lower cost cable. It can be longer distance than that cable. It can be up to 30 meters. However, it can be used for the high density pathway. But the only disadvantage for this cable that when it is damaged, you need, or scrapped from inside, you need to remove this cable and exchange it. You don't need to, these transceivers cannot be removed from the cable, so you need to remove the cable or replace the cable. This is also comparison between that cable, the passive cable, or active cable from the DAC cable, also the active optical cable, and when you are using the two transceiver and the structure cabling from both sides. As I said, the transceiver with the structure cabling system, it offers the most flexibility, but it will have a higher cost when you are using DAC and AOC. It is a plug and play solutions. You can be using it for your distance. You can be connected for the top of the rack or even adjacent cabinet. You can be connected it directly for the top of the rack or mid of row. Lower power consumptions. The cable management is easier using this cable, but you need to consider the maximum distance reach for the connections to choose the right cable. Also, for the AOC, we have the different scenario, we have a different configurations for the cable, starting from SFP plus for the 10 gig, we have 25 gig, we have a 40 gig using QSFP plus, and also QSFP 28 form factor also can be available for 100 gig transmission. All this cable coming with PVC, it is available in OM3 solutions, so you can be choosing based on your data rate required and distance required for it. Very important also to check your compatibility with your active device. You can check our technical reference. Our technical reference, you can be understanding and the compatibility for our DAC or even AOC cables. This guide can giving you the list of the switch and servers that it's compatible with our AOC cables. And also you need to understand that Panduit, it is the only third-party cable infrastructure that is certified from Panduit from Cisco for Nexans 2000 and Nexans 5000. So it's very important to understand that this is the only cable from Panduit. This is approved by Cisco for the Nexans 2000 and 5000. It means that you can be using our cable and you still receive for support from Cisco Tech. Okay, for the Optic Cam Solutions, it is also another innovations from Panduit. It is a tool, you can be using it on the side for the connectors. It is innovative from Panduit connector. It have a gel field inside the cable, pre-terminated, pre-polished. You can be using it not only pass-fail, you can be check your calculated and check your insertion loss for the Optic Cam. It have LCD interface. You can have interface can guide you for the process when you are using our Optic Cam solutions. It is a mechanical splicing. You can be terminate up to 3 times for your connectors. It's very important. You can be re-terminate the connector up to 3 times with the same performance. It is not using a glue or using fusion. It's a mechanical. You can be alignment your fiber using our connector. It is also innovative from Panduit. We have applications. You can be connected it using via Bluetooth. You can be connected using our applications and have some reporting and solutions for it. It's very simple. For the Optic Cam 2, it is 3 steps. You can have load connectors, insert connector, and finally it will be test your insertion loss. I need to highlight that this is the only tool that calculates the insertion loss immediately after you connect your connectors inside the cables for the field determinations. You can see the insertion loss and choose, are you going to save it or re-terminate the connector again if you are unhappy with the insertion loss happened in your connector. This is the final polling questions. We need to understand your are you using or will be considered our innovative Optic Cam. We can reach us for more information about Optic Cam and how you can be using it. Okay, for 44% that say no, will not consider, you can be connect Panduit and we team, and you can be giving you more information about Optic Cam and what the advance for the Optic Cam solutions. Okay, now thank you for your time today, and I will do my best to answer any questions for you now.
Thank you, Mohamed, for the very informative session. Before we start with the questions, I'd like to point out that at the end of the webinar, a survey will pop up on your screen to collect your feedback on today's session. Your input is highly appreciated as we are always looking to optimize our work to fit your expectations. Also, we will be sharing with you the recording of this session in case you missed any of the information or wish to go back to it. Now back to you, Mohamed. We were asked, first question, is there any difference between MTP and MPO connectors?
As I told you, no, MTP connectors, it is by definition, and MPO connectors, and both MPO and MTP connector complying with IEC, complying with TIA standard. MTP, it is a trademark from the innovations from US Connect, but MTP and MPO, it is the same definitions for the connectors.
All right. A second question, is Panduit's Pan-MPO connector compliant with industry standards?
Yes, sure. Pan-MPO connector, it meets with all industry interface standard. It is completely intermatable with other MPO. You can be connected with other MPO. The only advantage for it, as we said, this is the only connector can change the gender. You can be changing the polarity on the field.
All right. And what is the difference between pre-terminated interconnect and trunk MPO cables?
As I told in the first, that when you are configuring for the MPO cables for the pre-terminated solutions, you can be using interconnect cable. Interconnect cable is a 3 millimeter cable. It is designed and tested for shorter applications. If you are going to have a horizontal cabling, you are connecting between the horizontal cable for the end of row or mid of row, you can be using interconnect up to 30 meters. But for the trunk cable, to have you a greater mechanical protections for the pre-terminated solutions, you can be using it instead of using interconnect cable. So it will coming with pulling eye, giving you more greater protections for the cable, greater than 30 meters, and it's available up to 1,000 meters.
I see. And is signature core standards compliant?
Signature core, yes, signature core is fully standard compliant and meet and exceed As I told you, it exceeds the requirement for any international standard from the TIA or IEC. It is the only advance for it. It's giving you greater reach when you are going with any applications. It will give you greater distance when you are using the signature score or OM4 plus or OM5 plus.
All right, and Mr. Mustafa Fathi is asking, does the 100 gig needs 8 strands like for 40 gig or more?
For 100 gig, you have two choices. As I said, you can using PiDi. You are using only 2 cores for serial transmission. For 100 gig, you can be using, as I said, 100 gig. You have 2 different applications. The first one, SR4. SR4, it means that when you are going to the transceiver with SR4, it means that you need 4 pairs. 4 pairs, you need 8 fiber. It means that for transmission and for receive. 800 gig, it's available now with SR4. I think in the past we have SR10 for the 10 gig, 100 gig, but it's obsolete now. And 100 gig can be supported using 8 fiber. So MPO with 8 fiber or 12 fiber, you can be using to transmit 100 gig.
All right, and Mr. Fayaz Abdel Rahman is asking, do we have any drawing or can we provide any drawing that will give him more details of connectivity scenarios for direct attached cable and active optic cable?
Sure, we have a technical performance and technical reference and guide. You can be check it. We can, kindly send me your email and I'll send you all applications for the DAC and the AOC cables and also the technical reference with the compatibility from Panduit to other switches and servers.
All right. Thank you so much, Mohamed. I believe these are the questions we've had so far. I hope everyone has enjoyed the presentation and it has expanded your knowledge. If you do have any further questions, please contact Mohamed via his email address that will be shown on the next slide after this one, and or reach out to info@itrident.com. Once again, thank you all for attending today's webinar. We wish you a pleasant day ahead and we are looking forward to seeing you at our upcoming event.